I pull back and sit down by the road while Jesus and the crowd move on. He had granted the woman's request, sure enough, but the haunting question to me is, had he loved her, or was this a reluctant response to get her to go away? I think I know the answer in my head, but I don't feel like I know the answer in my heart yet. Sometimes God is silent. How do I interpret the silence? Are we indeed driving along that country road, soaking in the scenery and cherishing each other's presence? Or are we in the middle of a tense, unspoken argument? This is the question that I've asked for the last 3 weeks. Yet, at the hour when I'm in my greatest need, I still hear nothing but silence. Jesus loves me. This I think. I know the biblical answer, of course. A mother would never forget her nursing baby, though she may sit silently, I might add. But God promises Israel that even if she did forget, He will never forget them. They are His people. He is their God. He has written their name on His hand. The Lord rejoices over them with singing. He will quiet them with His love. He will deal with all who oppress them. He will rescue the lame and gather those who have been scattered. Comforting words, to be sure. But wait a minute. Just a chapter or two earlier, the Lord had said that He would stretch out His hand against Judah and against all who live in Jerusalem. He would bring a dreadful day against them for their idolatry and corruption and would send them away. Only then will the remnant be saved. Before the Lord quiets with His love, sometimes He destroys with His vengeance. Maybe a man needs to be lame before he can leap for joy. Maybe a nation must be scattered before the remnant can be gathered. And sometimes, maybe individuals suffer because of the sins of their society in which they live, or because a natural disaster happened to fall on that particular region. Maybe, just maybe, it's not about me at all. I can't really appreciate wealth, health, or life until it is taken from me. When all goes well, I start to view it as an entitlement rather than a blessing. I take for granted clean drinking water, a decent job, a good friend, a working telephone, a car that runs, or anything else I have had without interruption. Then, when that interruption comes, I want it back, and now, like a spoiled child, I rail against God, screaming, I want. Sometimes I'm driving with one of my children with a secret plan to do something special together. She asks, can I eat this piece of candy that I found in my pocket? I say, no. But I don't tell her that my plan is to stop for an ice cream treat in a few minutes. She doesn't really notice the smile in my eyes at the plan that is about to unfold, but I don't want to spoil the surprise. So I seem like a heartless dad, and I test the patience and trust of my child. If she will accept my disappointing words at this moment, then her reward will be well worth it, but she doesn't know that. I wonder if I come across to the father like a boy throwing a tantrum over a comparatively small disappointment when he knows that something wonderful is just around the corner, if I can only trust now. I've spent my life taking things for granted, including God. When I look at God, I see no more than His hands, for I see Him as the great provider and healer, and I fail to seek His face. When I look at His hands only, I only see God as the one whom I hope will kindly say yes to my personal prayers, or whom I fear may coldly say no to them, or who may even reach out and smack me for disappointing Him. I'm not prepared for a silent God who fails to answer at all, but gently collects my tears in a bottle while He sheds even more tears Himself. One very hot summer day, my 10-year-old son was pitching for his baseball team. He pitched one of the best games in his life, but the other team was matching ours in every way. The scoreless game went into extra innings, and because Daniel was the only pitcher for our team that day, he continued to pitch in the heat of day, throwing far more pitches than any young boy should throw. Finally, in the fourth extra inning, there was a walk, a stolen base, a bunt, and an error, and the game was over. Daniel was spent and devastated. Driving home after the game, I had a few words of encouragement about how well he had done and how he had given his best. I was so proud of him for going beyond what could be expected of anyone. But there wasn't much more to say. When we got home, Daniel went to his room and collapsed on the floor, quietly weeping out of exhaustion and disappointment. I knew the right thing to do right then. It wasn't time for words. I went to the floor beside him, wrapped him in my arms, and the two of us gave up our manly dignity and cried for a while. We both knew what was being said. Could it be that in the midst of my pain I have failed to feel the arms of my Father wrapped around me as he silently weeps with me? Jesus hangs on the cross, crying into the darkness, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This time, there is no voice, no descending dove, no thunder roll or earthquake or angel, only a forsaken, naked man dying on a cross. Sometimes silence is the highest expression of love. William Cowper was a brilliant hymn writer in England in the 18th century. But Cowper was also given to deep fits of depression, and more than once he came to the verge of suicide. The story is told that one foggy day in London, Cowper decided to end it all. He hailed a taxi to take him to London Bridge, where he planned to throw himself off into the frigid waters of the River Thames. The weather was so unusually foggy that day, however, that the taxi carriage driver could not see well enough to find his way to the fateful bridge. For 2 hours they crawled through the streets of London, turning this way and that. Finally, in exasperation, Cowper told the driver to stop. He would get out and walk. Frustrated, he jumped out of the taxi and tried to get his bearings. To his surprise, he discovered that he was right in front of his own house. This he took as a sign from the Lord that God was with Cowper. Instead of ending his life, he wrote the hymn. God moves in a mysterious way his wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps on the sea, and he rides upon the storm. You fearful saints, fresh courage take. The clouds you so much dread are rich with mercy, and shall break in blessing on your head. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence he hides a smiling face. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. God moves in a mysterious way. He does, you know.